guys, I'm going to be doing my March wrap-up and TBR. I had a pretty good reading month. I read, I think, 7 books, and I'm in the middle of another one. I'm just going to jump in and start with the first book that I finished this month, and that was Purple Hibiscus by Chimamanda and Ngozi Adichie. This is the story of Kambili and her family. They live in Nigeria and they're pretty well off. However, Kambili lives in a very oppressive household. Her father is a religious fanatic and is very abusive, specifically to her mother, but also to Kambili and her brother. When Kambili and her brother are sent off to live with their aunt because of situations that are happening in Nigeria and with their father's job, it's very dangerous for them to keep living at home, so their father sends them to live with their aunt, and it is very, very different in her aunt's house. It's not an abusive home, and Kambili starts to believe that maybe life doesn't have to be the way she's always known. This was pretty heartbreaking for me to read. From the beginning, there's just this oppressive tone and atmosphere to this story. Kambili is very young. She's about 15. She adores her father. She respects him, looks up to him, and defends him. So that was really hard to read, specifically because you feel for Kambili. Kambili is kind of figuring things out for herself, comparing things, and being forced to look at her family life, having to look at her father, who is a hero figure to her, and realize that he's not as perfect as she's always imagined him to be, that not everybody is raised this way, and that maybe her life will make a turn for the better. So I really did enjoy this overall, even though it was really hard to read about Kambili's father and how abusive he is to his family and how oppressed they all are. I feel like Adichie is a great writer. You can tell this is her first novel because Americana to me was a lot better and a lot more polished, but I still enjoyed it. The second book I read was The Shadow of the Wind. I checked this out from the library at the beginning of the month. I'm not going to talk too much about it because I did a review on this last week, and I'll link to that video down below. I absolutely love this. I thought it was an amazing, tragic, and magical story, and I think it's just one of those books that everybody should read for themselves. I highly, highly recommend that one. And I'm definitely going to be picking up a copy of my own. The next book I read was The House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros. This is a story of a young girl growing up in a poor neighborhood in Chicago. It's told in a series of vignettes, which is very different than anything I've really ever read. Because this is written in vignettes, it's kind of like you're getting just the smallest bite of the story, so I didn't really connect with this as much as I wish I had, but sometimes that happens. You just don't connect to books, and that doesn't mean that they're bad books. They just didn't work for you, and this was one of those. The next book that I read was Interpreter of Maladies by Jhumpa Lahiri. This is a Pulitzer Prize winning collection of short stories that have to do with Indian Americans or Indian culture. The stories are all very different, but they kind of share a common theme, mostly identity, culture, and grief. As always, in a short story collection, there were some stories that stuck out more than others, but I just have to be really honest with you guys. I do not understand why this won a Pulitzer. I felt that it's well written, but nothing special. A lot of people really hold this in high esteem and think this is a wonderful collection. But as I was reading it, I just kept waiting to be wowed and, you know, read a story that really made me think differently. And I just did not get it with this collection at all. I guess it just wasn't for me, but I am very interested to hear about your thoughts. If you read this and ended up loving it, please leave a comment down below and tell me why. Next, I read Love in the Time of Cholera by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. And I really, really enjoyed this. I'm also not going to go too much into this one because I did a review on this last week along with The Shadow of the Wind. This was my first Marquez, and I cannot wait to read more of him. The next one I'm going to be reading is 100 Years of Solitude, and I'm actually going to be reading that one with another booktuber, Sophia. I'll have her channel down below. I absolutely love her videos. We're going to be reading 100 Years of Solitude throughout the month, and it's going to be April of Solitude, so that's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to get started on that one. But yeah, I absolutely love this and I highly recommend it. I read The Well of Ascension by Sanderson. This is the second book in the Mistborn series. This book was okay. I enjoyed it because I love the characters and I still think that the metals thing is really, really cool. But for some reason, I found this book very, very slow. I wasn't expecting that because usually in a series, the first book is the slow book because you have a lot of the world building, the introduction of characters, and kind of a lot of backstory. And so the next two books kind of just pick up and go. And this one, I was hoping that it would just pick up and go, but it didn't until the last third of the book. And this is a pretty big book. So I was a little bit frustrated with it. I kept hoping it would just get to the action, and it really didn't until the very, very last bit of it. So it was okay, but I'm really hoping that the third book, The Hero of Ages, is a lot more fast-paced and action-packed because I really enjoy that aspect of the books. And Sanderson can write a really good action scene, so I'm kind of hoping that for the third book, picking that up next month. And I think that's the last book in the series, so I'm really hoping that it ends on a really high note. And then after that, I read Kindred by Octavia E. Butler, and I had a lot of issues with this book. This is a story about a woman named Dana who is transported back in time when slavery was still in existence. She does not understand at first why she's there, but it becomes clear that the reason she's being transported abruptly against her will is because she's trying to save a white man named Ruiz. I thought the premise was interesting at first, but it quickly became apparent to me that I was not going to like this book. We have two white men in this story who are very cruel, violent, and very hateful men. It was so hard to read about them, specifically Ruiz. He is the vilest person I've ever read about. I couldn't stand him. And then Dana at some points frustrated me because she sort of defends him or sympathizes with him for no reason. There is no reason to sympathize at all with this character. So she frustrated me a bit with that. Another reason I feel like this book was not as important to me as other people is because I feel like this has a very hard-hitting narrative. It's a very tough subject to talk about, but I've read other accounts of slavery, specifically 12 Years a Slave comes to mind, and that book to me was more powerful and still had some rays of hope and humanity and just really touches you in a way that this book didn't. The more that Dana goes back in time and interacts with Ruiz, I mean, she's living on their house for sometimes 8 months at a time. So, you know, these are times where she could have either changed something or improved the situation or learned something or taught something, but she doesn't really do any of that. She's just back in time and that's it. You know, there's no real climax or resolution. There's no real reason why she was chosen to go back in time and deal with this family. I was just really disappointed in it. I did not understand at all what the point of the story was. The writing style to me seemed very bare bones and dry. I don't know how else to explain it. I think if you're trying to read something that has to do with this period in history and have it be a powerful, eye-opening experience, I would not recommend this book. I recommend that you read 12 Years a Slave, not only because it is a real-life account, but because Solomon Northup just has this way of writing that touches you, and throughout it all, he's going through this situation that would break anybody. And not only is he surviving, but he's also hopeful and still has faith. And that to me was a book that gave you everything. So this book just did not cut it for me, and I don't know if I'm going to continue with Butler's other works. I want to try Parable of the Sower, but if it's anything like this, I don't think I'm going to connect with the writing. So if Parable of the Sower is good, let me know. But this was just an okay read for me. I'm currently reading The Diary of Anais Nin. I am about halfway through, and I am very surprised by this. This reads more like a fictional novel, than a diary, in my opinion. I don't know if it's because Anais is a writer by nature, and so she writes, you know, her letters, her notes, everything in this way. But I don't dislike it, I just wasn't prepared for it. So I am kind of enjoying this. I don't know what to make of it yet exactly. I'm gonna try and finish it in the next week or so. But so far, I think it's okay. It's very interesting, very different than I would imagine a diary to be. And I think that can be a good thing. I think Anais uses her diaries as kind of a writing tool, and that's very interesting. So I'm gonna keep reading this. I only have 3 books that I know for sure I'm going to be reading. I'm going to be making a library run soon, and so I'll be reading whatever I get from there, and I don't know exactly what that's going to be yet. So what I know for sure I'm going to be reading in April is The Hero of Ages by Brandon Sanderson, because I want to finish the Mistborn series with everybody else. I'm also going to read The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. I really want to finish the series this year, and so I'm going to get started next month on this one. Of course, I'm going to be reading 100 Years of Solitude with Sophia, and I'm very excited about that. And those are the only books I know for a fact I'm going to be reading. My next video is probably going to be a library haul, and most likely I'm going to be reading all of those. So those are all of the books I read this month. If you've read any of these books, let me know your thoughts on them in the comments below. I'd love to talk to you about them. And that's pretty much it. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.